Hi everybody, Matt here from Matt Likes Comics. Today I'm going to show some books from a series that ran from 1949 till 1979. And then under another name ran another few years until 1987. And that series is named Superboy. In 1944, as a character, Superboy debuted in More Fun Comics 101. Joe Shuster provided the art, but Jerry Siegel was in the Army at the time and was not involved with the creation of Superboy. Superboy's use ended up leading to a lawsuit between Siegel and Shuster and DC Comics about ownership of the character, due to the fact that, it was obviously a derivative of Superman. Well, Joe and Jerry lost, but managed to settle it for $94,000, and they were fired. Jerry ended up working for DC Comics again in the 60s, very quietly, but when he started, and he's a writer of one of the books I'm going to show, but he ended up getting all uppity about, uppity's not the right word, I apologize. He ended up getting riled up again about the ownership issue when Bob Kane re-signed a new deal in the 60s. And so Siegel was fired again and hadn't worked for DC ever since. Superboy as a character, though, was moved from More Fun Comics to Adventure Comics after 7 issues, and it started with Adventure 103. And he became the lead of the comic book until 299, and there were original issues of Adventure Comics, had original stories until 315, at which point, for the next 15 or so issues after that, they had reprints, and then it went to an All Legion magazine and stayed that way until 381 when Supergirl took over. As for the Superboy series, they created its own series titled Superboy in 1949. So you now had 2 series, Adventure Comics and Superboy, starring young Clark Kent. Which brings me to the books that I'm going to show from that series. They are from the Go-Go Checks era, and I picked them because it's Go-Go Checks. Also, in this era, there was no doubt it was a Superboy book. It was only, he wasn't sharing it with anybody else. And each issue had 2 stories in it. But the stories I'm going to talk about in each book are the ones that are on the cover. This was a fun period. All of these stories I would rate as, your typical, here's a small problem and whatever, moves on. Superboy stories always had less supervillains, the odd alien, the odd weird thing, but until the 60s they were very low-key, very quick, very wholesome stories, because at the time DC editorial had decided that Superboy stories, even though he started at 8 years old in that first story in More Fun Comics 1 and became 10 years old in early of his Adventure Comics, they basically aged him up to about 14, 15, and he stayed there, because what they wanted to do was they always wanted the Superboy stories, and they did this throughout the entire time Superboy was a thing, right up to Crisis. They wanted to keep them about 15 years behind the current thing. So in the 1950s and 60s, it's late 30s, early 40s. So the technology and the stories are similar to that. There's no TV. There's more general stores. The cars are drawn as old, Model T type, barely starting the sedans and such. So There's a lot, and of course, there's the schooling with the teachers and such. It was all kind of neat, and I'm sure done by as an idyllic thought of the writers slash what they thought, even though because most comic creators are from New York, so it was a little different bit. And of course, Superboy grew up in the town of Smallville. So let us begin with issue 127 of Superboy. This is the first appearance and only appearance of B-Boy. Basically, the strange insect lives of Lana Lang is the name of the story, and the writer is Otto Binder, and the artist is George Papp. Superboy carries Lana and Professor Lang to Africa to assist Dr. Pelham with his research. Lana brings her biogenetic ring that turns her to Insect Queen and takes many useful forms before the guide Kim Pelham becomes injured and his father, the doctor, saves him by turning him into B-Boy. B-Boy falls for Lana, and they have many adventures together. But he realizes that Lana is in love with Superboy and will never look at him the same. I just noticed that the light wasn't on. Next up, we have issue 130, which is Superboy's Super Baby searches for a pet. Super Baby misses Crypto, so he decides he wants a new pet. Unsatisfied with the farm animals, he causes trouble stealing animals from the zoo. When order is restored, he tries to get a sea serpent. Superboy finds a shape changer when he goes out in space looking for a pet. When the shape changer becomes a Kryptonian creature, it ends up hurting Super Baby, who then gives up looking for a pet. Years later, of course, Crypto and Superboy are reunited. Next up, we have Superboy 132. The youth who was braver than Superboy. And this is written by Leo Dorfman, and pencils were done by Kurt Swan, and the inks were done by George Klein. By the way, the last story was also Otto Binder and George Papp, the Super Baby one. So, this one here. To make young Alan Vale's last days happy as he is dying of an they don't tell you what he's dying for. His uncle Jason gives Alan superpowers through a serum and creates for him the identity of Supremo. Superboy, learning of Supremo's identity, allows him to help by pretending to be afraid of a prehistoric beast. Then he himself is playing the beast and lets Supremo defeat him. Alan dies shortly thereafter, believing that he beat a creature Superboy was not able to conquer. Next up, we have issue 133, which is called Super Baby's First Foster Parents. The writer is Otto Binder, and the art is by George Papp. Jor-El sends Kal-El to Earth. The Kents discover the baby, learn about his powers, and takes him to the Smallville orphanage. The next day, he is adopted by Deacon Dugan and his wife Millie, who intend to pass him off as a double of Sonny Vanderbilt, who's the son of a millionaire, as being kidnapped to the mob. The the project becomes a huge hassle for the couple, who end up being caught because they don't know how to deal with Kal-El's powers. Kal-El is returned to the orphanage. The Kents adopt him the very next day. These are all Kurt Swan covers, by the way. He didn't do the interior art on most of them because he was doing other books, but he's done most of the covers. This one is called The Scoundrel of Steel. This is Superboy 134. Writer Leo Dorfman, art by George Papp. On Earth 1, we have Clark Kent growing up as usual. But on Earth 134, Superboy encounters Red Kryptonite, and becomes a delinquent whenever he is near any type of rock. Superboy pushes Alcatraz to the mainland so that everybody can escape. When Pa Kent asks him to move back the island and capture them, he ends up terrorizing Pa Kent instead. He ends up dropping the Rock of Gibraltar on the Royal Navy. When he returns to normal, he finds that Pa Kent has turned him into the FBI. Superboy fixes all of his problems and then leaves Earth. This is Superboy 134, of course. So this is another one of those alternate Earths. Cool story, though. I liked it very much. The backup in that issue is also pretty good. So if you're going to buy any of these books, buy that one. Superboy 136. The Decoy of the Doom Statues. Crypto attends a meeting of the Space Canine Patrol agents when a character named Prophetic Pup predicts Superboy will be endangered by a hound and saved by another. After his SPCA adventures, Crypto returns and he and Superboy are somehow lured into a kryptonite trap by the feline inhabitants of the Black Cat world. Telepathically communicating with cats in the Phantom Zone. Yes, apparently there are cats in the Phantom Zone. Crypto discovers that he is the hound that endangered Superboy, but they are saved by a kid looking for an autograph or an autograph hound. Prophetic Pup was right, and they turned it into a pun. Silver Age comics really are great. Issue 137. The Mystery of the Mighty Might. This is another fun one, and this one is what I mean where they're like wholesome little stories. It's like 4 members of the Sulor family play a practical joke on Superboy by pretending to be a single Kryptonian infant left as a baby on the Kent's porch. They appear to age faster than ever as older members of the family take over for the tiny one that started. They try, and Superboy in his mind thinks it's a mistake he made, which made him grow faster. When the joke is revealed, Superboy plays a joke on them himself, and all is well. Like I said, wholesome stories. I mean, this is even more wholesome, so to speak, than Superman stories. Now, after the Go-Go Check years, Superboy gets a little more mature and certainly by the 70s, the stories get a little more, I don't want to say ridiculous, but more mature, there's more to them than just a little, oh, here's the nice little ditty. But in this period, it's fun. And this is the last one I'm going to show, which is Superboy 140 from July 1967. The Wizard of Odds is the name of the book. Jim Shooter Al Plastino and George Klein did this one. By the way, the last one I forgot to tell you was written by Leo Dorfman, and the art was done by George Papp, and inks were done by Chick Stone. So here, 140, The Wizard of Oz. Odds. The Gambler, a gangster and huge gambler, moves to Smallville and engineers his games of chaos based on his games of chance based on Superboy's actions before deciding on a plan to destroy him. Of course, in the end, he's unsuccessful and he ends up behind bars. So that's about half the Superboy Go-Go Checks era. A couple of the books in that era were 80-page giants, so they were all reprints anyway. But those are the ones I own at the moment. I would like to own all of them because I'm a pack rat and I love Superman. But that's neither here nor there. If you liked what you saw, please like, comment, and subscribe below. I really want to hear what you think of the books. I want to hear if you've read them, if you'd liked them, if you didn't like them. It's up to you. It's wide open. But I just like to hear from you because I like seeing comics from other people. I like when people see my comics. Thank you very much for joining me today. It is always a pleasure for me to do these videos, and I hope that you enjoy them when you watch them. My name is Matt. I like comics, and I hope you do too. Thanks for joining me. Bye.